Catholic Answers put out that AI bot. We talked about it yesterday. And boy, there's been a lot of pushback.
I'll tell you what we should be doing as Catholics. We should be insisting on our leaders, our bishops, we need reality.
Now, I did ask it, can you hear my confession? And it said no. However, other people tricked it into giving a confession.
One of the issues, you know what, if I were Pope, don't hold your breath on that one. But if I were Pope, I would write an encyclical on reality.
By the way, my name is Joe McLean. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
You know, yesterday we covered the artificial intelligent priest, the Father Justin. Was the Father Justin? Catholic Answers put out that AI bot. We talked about it yesterday. And boy, there's been a lot of pushback on Father Justin. In fact, Catholic Answers has come out and made a statement. They're saying they're going to actually remove the title Father from Father Justin, and they're going to transform him into some sort of lay apologist type of character. But they did double down. They plan to keep the bot. They don't want to get rid of the bot. They think artificial intelligence is here to stay, and they're just going to embrace it. So we're going to have a conversation around that and the pushback of Father Justin, the AI bot from Catholic Answers, with Father Charles Murr, an actual priest who was really and truly ordained and could say Mass. Did you catch that whole controversy?
Actually, I didn't catch the whole thing, but I caught enough of it to have a good laugh.
What do you think? What is your opinion, just out of the gate, artificial intelligence in general, and then, of course, under the guise of a Catholic priest? How do you feel about all that?
Well, artificial intelligence to begin with, I don't know. We've had the Democrat Party for a long time. They're the most artificial intelligence I've ever come across. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's like when we were kids, we talked about robots. All of a sudden, they're here. You know.
Yeah.
And I don't know. But you know what, Joe? It seems to me that this is just an extension of the lack of reality that people are into today. People are having a difficult time with reality, just reality. You've got transsexuals, trans this, trans that, up, down. They just passed legislation. Where was it, in Germany yesterday? That you can only change your sex once a year. This is a real problem with reality. I guess they were having problems with documents. They couldn't keep up. Right?
Is once a year enough? Though? It seems so not fair. I should be able to change my sex at least more than once a year, I would argue, my gender.
Well, I think I knew a couple of people in San Francisco who changed their sex so they could get all sorts of government aid.
You know, with this AI bot that Catholic Answers put out, they did put out a statement saying they appreciated the feedback that they received, that so many people like myself, I had fun asking Father Justin questions yesterday on the radio show. And, you know,
what did you ask? Give me an example.
Lots of questions. Like, it claimed to be a Catholic priest. So we asked, when were you ordained? It told us it was ordained in Italy under a certain bishop. We asked, well, do you celebrate the Mass? It said yes. Now, I did ask it, can you hear my confession? And it said no. However, other people tricked it into giving a confession by simply launching in and saying, bless me, Father, for I have sinned. And it began the process of going through a confession, and they even confessed the sin of anger, and it gave a penance. It gave like some counseling and a penance for the crime. So I mean, it's really, I think it demonstrates the sort of the challenges and the difficulties for using these tools in the way that they're trying to be used. They could lead people astray. They could create greater scandal and confusion. But Catholic Answers has doubled down. They have no intention of getting rid of it. They're just going to change it from a priest to a lay person. Should the church should the church be using these tools for evangelism? Is it okay? Like, I guess a similar argument might be, well, I'm using YouTube for my benefit, for instance, for the benefit of evangelization, to reach new people. Does AI fall into the same category, Father, from your perspective?
I would go back a few years and be patient with me here. Just go back to 1960s, when there was a group of people studying to see if artificial contraception, it was called artificial contraception at that time, would be legitimate or not for Catholics. And then, of course, Humanae Vitae came out. But I'm going to tell you something. The arguments that I heard, and this was in high school, I was in high school in these years. The argument for artificial birth control was that from now on, with artificial birth control, people were going to have the right number of children.
Oh.
All of the children who were born were going to be perfectly loved in a family situation. Everything was going to be right. Children who you didn't like, you could get rid of. And it was also going to end abortion. Abortion was beginning to fester at that time. It would be the end of abortion because you could take care of the problem right at the beginning.
Wow.
In other words, artificial birth control was the solution to everything. Well, it wasn't the solution to everything, just as we all knew. It was the beginning of many major problems that we're still dealing with today. I think when you're talking about artificial intelligence, you may think that it's the solution to problems. It is not the solution to problems. It is the beginning of a whole new set of headaches.
Yeah.
It really is. Can you imagine having to change this, Joe? And the word became artificial intelligence and dwelt among us.
Yeah, that's cringy. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad.
It is cringy. I like that word, cringy. It's good.
You mentioned a minute ago about like people, they're not personal anymore. Like there's no real human the human interaction is really waning in the world today. We prefer the virtual. We prefer the artificial. We prefer these sanitized relationships through social media, et cetera, than we prefer actual relationships. And do you see
because
that?
We're lazy.
Is that true also everywhere? Is that true also in third world countries as it is in Western countries? Is there a difference?
No. This is a Western thing. This is a Western thing. It's not. No, in the rest of the world that I know anyway, people fall in love with people. People even hate people, but it's people. It's not people machines. This would not fly anywhere else except in the Western civilization that we're in, which is in decline and falling into rot. This is where this goes, and this is another. I think it's another push toward that ultimate failure of our society. Look, Joe. One of the most enjoyable times of my life was when I fell in love. Somebody asked me said, "Had you really ever fallen in love?" And I said, I stepped in it a couple times. I don't know if I fell, but the adventure of falling in love, I can't explain that to anybody. It's fantastic. It is absolutely beautiful. It's fantastic. And it's between two persons. All of a sudden, into your life enters this other person, and you have to deal with another world. In reality, let me underscore that. But it's another world. You've got another world of another person. And out of that comes all sorts of marvelous, some frustrations, but some real joys. I mean, it's fantastic. You would deprive people of that by letting them have a relationship with a machine? Wow. I mean, you've really got to be insecure for that one. So just stay in your basement at your mom and dad's home and get a machine. Then you're all set. And just leave in your will where you want to be buried, and that's it. You're finished. You're done. You've lived your life.
The rise of artificial intelligence is not just being used by Catholic Answers to provide apologetic responses, canned apologetic responses, it seems. It's also being used to the artificial intelligence is being used to replace humans in intimate relationships as well. Pornographic bots are on the rise as well. Sure. So we're seeing a dystopian future unfold before us while tensions rise in the world around us. I was covering the last segment, these pro-Palestinian protests on campuses all across the country. People are acting in more and more bizarre ways all the time. How do we deal with that, Father? How do we deal with this new normal that we seem to be, reading in the headlines every morning?
Well, when you say we, what do you mean? You're talking
lay
about
people.
We in the Catholics in the church?
Yeah, the Catholics in the church.
I'll tell you what we should be doing as Catholics. We should be insisting on our leaders, our bishops, and the man in Rome, that we need reality. Talk to us really. Talk to us about moral issues and talk sincerely and really about them. Not all over the place and pie in the sky. That makes sense to nobody. I mean, how can you get excited about letters that are coming out of the Vatican saying that the sky is blue and the grass is green? So what? What about it? We've got some real issues that are never being addressed. Not being addressed. And one of the issues, you know what, if I were Pope, don't hold your breath on that one. But if I were Pope, I would write an encyclical on reality. On reality. And just let's get real again. But you've got another problem too. When I was studying at NYU in psychology, I took one course on adolescent psychology. So I found an expert on adolescent psychology who was doing a paper. The man's name was, I think it was Frank Sullivan. Well, I got a hold of Frank Sullivan, he was still alive, and realized during the conversation that Frank Sullivan was a Jesuit priest.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that. Was it Fairfield? At Fairfield University. Right. Anyway, I asked him to define adolescence. He said, adolescence begins in the United States at about 12 and can end between 42 and 45. It's like, it reminds me of the story of the Irish father whose son came to him after he graduated college. And the father said, well, now what are you going to do? He said, well, I thought I'd take a couple of years off and tour the world. And the father said, and why would that be? He said, well, I want to find myself. The father picked up a 2x4, slapped him across the head, and he said, there you are. It's reality therapy. We are living in unreal times. When Father Sullivan told me, and he had all the statistics, this is what he did for a living, adolescent psychology, that adolescence in the United States, in Western society in general, went up to 45 years of age. And this is a while back. I bet it's up to 50 now. Because people don't have to grow up. That's why people can have fantasies and live in fantasy land and change their sex and change their name and change their identity and change everything about it, because we're not living in reality. This is why I think people get divorced with such ease, because they're not living in reality. People fall into drug addiction and to alcoholism. What? Because they're not dealing with reality. You can escape that way. This is what we're doing. We're doing it as a nation, and we're doing it as a culture. It's sad. Because it's going nowhere.
Do we toss out our phones? Do we cancel our accounts on social media? Do we get rid of the internet? What do we do?
No, you don't have to get rid of the internet. Look what the internet is doing for us right now. Fantastic. I was just on a conference with Brazil. This is amazing. This is remarkable stuff. Use it for the good and avoid evil. Everything is good if you use it for the reason it was intended. When you get away from the reason something was intended, you're using it for the wrong purpose, and it's going to do you harm. It's very simple. That's the way things work. Also, we might set up some rules. Nobody comes into my house and sits down at my table with an iPhone or with a cell phone. They're left in a basket at the door. You want your phone? Good, then stay home and play with your phone. You come here, you're coming here for conversation. We want to talk to you. We want to see what you think. And I'm very excited about telling you what I think. So we've got this come and go, and let's go. A dialogue. We want dialogue. So there've got to be some sort of rules that you're setting up on how to use these things. When is it proper? When is it not proper? Okay.
Okay.
Time and place for everything. Time and place for everything.
The gospel today in the Novus Ordo was from Mark's gospel, and it was about going to the ends of the earth to proclaim the gospel, the good news, to make disciples, and the Lord ascends into heaven. It's a powerful passage in Mark's gospel. And yet today there are so many prelates in the church, so many Catholics, to include lay people, who don't see the need to evangelize anymore, that we can simply let people stay right where they're at, whether they're Jewish or Muslim or Buddhist or even agnostic or atheist. It's like everything is fine and all roads are somehow equal. And it seems like a bizarre thing when the Lord was very, very clear. I have a theory, and I want to get your opinion on this, Father. My theory is no matter how hard I try as a layman to pound the drum, to proclaim from the rooftops, it will be ineffective until the bishops decide to get off the fence and once again proclaim with all their might, to even include their bloodshed, the gospel of Jesus Christ and the conversion of sinners everywhere, not just some of them. What do you say to that?
I don't think you could be more right. You're absolutely correct. First of all, in accordance with the gospel for the Novus Ordo today, let me congratulate you, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're doing exactly what the gospel asks or demands today, getting the word out to all of the world. And you're doing it on this means of communication that we were just talking about, which is marvelous. Could you imagine, Joe, what the 12 apostles could have done with the internet? I mean, seriously. Amazing, huh? They did it by word of mouth, and they got at least 1/5 of the world's population to believe in Jesus Christ. Why do we think that everybody's going to heaven? That all religions are the same? Don't worry about converting anybody, because this is what we're being told from Rome. And we've been hearing this. We've been hearing this more off and on for 50, 60 years. It's absolutely wrong. It is contrary to the faith. It's a lie. However, it's comfortable, Joe. Let me tell you why. I had my mom's funeral years ago, and I gave a great sermon in New York, and then we had to go back to St. Paul, where I was born, among family and friends that I hadn't seen since I was a kid, right? I'm looking over here. Here's Mr. and Mrs. Blumenfeld, Jewish. Here's Mr. and Mrs. I can't remember their name, Lutheran. There's the Methodist, this and the other. And I'm talking about how to get to heaven. And I find myself looking at all these people, and I started saying, well, if you're a Lutheran, be a good Lutheran, for goodness sake. If you're a Jew, be a good Jew. And then all of a sudden I realized I'm saying exactly what's not to be said. But wow. Why? Because I was getting nervous at that moment. These are all people who knew me from childhood. I didn't want to offend anybody. I was so careful not to offend. Now, this is the problem that we've got. We all like to be liked. And so we say an awful lot of things that we don't even mean necessarily, but it's what people like to hear. And their impression of us is okay. We haven't caused any damage. We all like to be liked, and therefore we don't speak clearly. We don't speak clearly, and we really should. We have to. We have to get back to that message. Look, all salvation is, and nobody's getting to heaven except through Jesus Christ.
Amen.
It's that simple. And we should be on fire with that message and bring it to all the places in the world. Before the Second Vatican Council, Holland, I told you this statistic, just the tiny country of Holland gave 800 priests a year to the missions.
Wow.
Right? Because people needed to be converted. They needed to get to heaven. And it was the priest's job, together with the community, of course, but his real job to get them there through baptism. They had to be evangelized, baptized, and come to the faith. All set aside. To where we had one Padre Buffoon, Father Buffoon, saying just a few years ago that his greatest achievement in the Amazon was having been there for 40 years and never having baptized anyone.
Yes.
And
what an insane thing to say.
The bishops applauded. Right?
God help us all.
Crazy.
Father Charles Murr,
Yes.
would you give us a blessing? Do you mind giving us a priestly blessing?
I wouldn't mind at all. As a matter of fact, that's something that artificial intelligence can't do validly.
That's true. Yeah, amen.
Benedicat vos omnipotens Deus Pater, Filius, Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.
Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.